And we are deeply privileged tonight to have Nick Melvoin with us from the LA Unified School District board member. Nick, what's my formal way to address you tonight?
Oh, Nick, please.
I don't have to do your honor?
You know, it's technically the honorable. I don't know who came up with that, but I will, no, Nick is fine.
Technically, it is your honorable, and it is, and so I would hope that those that are listening, if I don't address you that way, and you're not offended by me and in some way dressing you down by that. I don't do that. I think we try to recognize that we're all members of the community and try to all help out here. So no disrespect that's been on that. I think with this informal Zooms that we end up doing, the formalities somewhat end up getting dropped from that, but it's not intentional. We recognize the amount of work that you've done and what a great service you're putting to our community. And we deeply appreciate that. So I see we got quite a few people on. We are a few minutes into the 7:30 hour. We'll try to get things finished up no later than 9 o'clock tonight. If you have other issues you have to get to, Nick, let us know too. We'll try to accommodate you and don't want this to be too abusive in that regard, taking your time away from your family and other things too. So we'll formally call ourselves to order. We are in a Zoom meeting process to it. We are doing a webinar, as all of you probably recognize. We had problems before, which I just get sort of a kick out of. We got Zoom bombed and we were doing it as a straight meeting, and we had people running around with flags they shouldn't have had. Some of the people running around without any clothes on at all. So it was a rather interesting meeting, to say the least, on trying to get them off. So we're now in a webinar format. As a result, it limits the amount of video that we can utilize as far as people to be seen and questions we can take. For those of you that do have questions, do utilize the Q&A that's down at the bottom of your screen. You'll see the Q&A, just tap that in, put your questions in there. Shelley will be monitoring those tonight along with Aaron, and we'll try to make sure that all of your questions get here. Also want you to know that I do not give questions out to our panelists beforehand. While the subject areas are obviously known, and anybody who's able to walk and chew gum probably knows what they are anyway, but nonetheless, these are not pre-done questions that either Nick has supplied to me or to our board, or that I have given to him in writing. The areas are known, but there we are. So let's go from that. Let's start off, if we may, with a pledge of allegiance. And if I may, let's do that, just so it has a bit of more formality to it. Nick, would you do us the honor and lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance?
I would, and you beat me with the background. I was going to get. I have like some flag pillows, so
that'll do too. I like it.
If you're able, please rise. I know it's awkward on Zoom, but repeat after me. So, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that, Nick. Thank you for the props. I didn't know those would be.
Indeed.
It's all good. All right, a couple of background things are going on. For all of you that are coming online, and some of you may be new, or that may wish to get your friends and neighbors involved with us, please give me your emails. I need your emails. Go over to our website, which is whho.com. You'll find a place on that where you can give us your emails. They're very important to us, so we stay in contact with each other, especially in these days and in these times. That's very important. Those of you who wish to become members, recognize that a household membership is just $25 a year. We need that. It helps us to offset our expenses on things. That becomes very important to us all. We need your help in that regard and your ideas. The more that we have of members, the better we have with ideas of things that are going on. I just had an interesting email conversation with one of a person who's going to become a member, is concerned about the Woodland Hills Golf Course. And for those of you who don't know, the golf course has been, I guess we can say, sold. It's been internally purchased, but the desire is for them to turn that into a 9-hole golf course and put houses up in the other locations to it. We're going to have some serious discussions on that and find some ways to keep that as a historical location, if nothing else. By the way, I remember that Ronald Reagan, I believe, actually announced his run for governorship at that location at one point. So keep that in mind. We need your help. We need those minds, and we need the memberships too. You can get that. You can find the membership application on our website as well. Do be aware we have one. You'll see it in the background, which I guess I need to change back to where we were before. We have I've lost my background. There we go. We do have a number of advertisers that advertise in our newsletter. Your emails allow us to get that newsletter to you. We ask you to please support those advertisers that are there. They're good people. Let them know that you heard about them in the newsletter, and we'll go from there. Next meeting we have on April the 28th will be another Zoom meeting. We expect to have the president from Pierce College on. We need to talk to them about a number of things as well. And we'll see what we can do as far as understanding what they're going to do on the college and do the developments over there, and especially making sure they're protecting the farm. We have always in past decades done everything we can to make sure that farm remains as agricultural purposes for the future. Another quick update for you on the promenade. You may be hearing some rumors that Westfield has sold their properties. That is not true. Westfield has put their properties, the American properties are going to be going on the auction block probably sometime next year. I have spoken with Molly Unger just yesterday, as a matter of fact, and who's general manager from over there. The flagship properties such as the Promenade and the Topanga are very, very unlikely to ever be considered on that particular process. Never know what ends up changing, but stay tuned. We'll find out what happens. We don't know what that's going to mean for the stadium, whether or not they can actually build that or not, but we'll see. Two last items before we get to you, Nick. First, Valley Vote, which I used to be a member of many years ago when I was working on secession. As you may know and may remember, I was one of the chief petitioners for Valley Cityhood back in the days. Valley Vote was very much in the forefront of that. They're going to start back up their meetings. They'll start it on the 29th, 7 o'clock in the evening. And go over to valleyvote.org if you want more information about that. District Attorney Cooley will be on. Guess who they're going to be discussing? DA George Gascon will be their major discussion and what's going on with that. That's been some real interesting developments that we've had in his tenure coming on. Also, Neighborhood Council has put on the rezoning issues on their March 25th agenda for the WHIP committee. You can go over to the Neighborhood Council for that at their website. Take a look at that. I would encourage you to get involved with that particular process. As you may or may not know, the Sacramento is got a full Monty approach to trying to take away our single family residents. They say there's not really a justification to have a single family home on such a large piece of property anymore. It needs to be able to accommodate more people. So state legislatures making an attempt to try to take away from us locally any of that local control, and for the state legislature to make a determination of what is and is not going to be appropriate in certain areas, getting permits and whether or not they have to be hearings. This is going to be a major thing. It's going to be coming up this year. There'll be more legislation that will be coming up as well. We'll probably take a good look at that in our May and June meetings and see what we can do concerning educating everybody with that and give everybody some directions of things they can do. So without further ado, Nick Melvoin, the Honorable Nick Melvoin, the Los Angeles Unified School District Board member. Nick, I will turn it over to you for you to go ahead and bring us up to date on everything that you need to talk about, and then we'll come back and do some questions and answers.
Great. Well, thank you, John, and for the invitation. Thanks, Shelley, for your help to coordinate. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks to the whole organization. I'll be brief in my remarks because I only have till about 8:15 before another Zoom. It'll be a full complement of 12-hour Zoom days, but I want to make sure we have time to answer all of the questions. But John had asked me to give a little background on me and the board and some of my priorities, and then I know there are topics that are close to this community's heart, whether that's reopening on all of our minds, kind of underutilized properties in the area and such. So really want to preserve most of the time for Q&A. But for those who I haven't met, I am depending on who you ask, honorable or dishonorable board member for Board District 4. I was elected to office in spring of 2017, going on 4 years, I guess, in May. Some days it feels like it's been 4 months, and some days it feels like it's been 40 years. But born and raised in Los Angeles, grew up on the West Side, went to schools in the West Side and then in the Valley, and began my career post-college as a teacher in LA Unified. I taught middle school in Watts, Markham Middle School at 104th and Compton, and that's what really opened up my eyes to the challenges with LAUSD and the opportunities. And so the last I guess 10 years or so before I joined the board consisted of working as a school, as a teacher, working for a few nonprofits. I went off to law school, spent some time working in Washington, came back, working as an attorney, as a consultant, as an organizer, as a nonprofit director, and then have been again on the board since 2017. A lot of questions, especially now, with overlapping jurisdictions about what is the board? How, is it the same as the city council? Who controls the schools? And so LA has a unique system of local government. Unlike other major cities, New York, Chicago, DC, the city apparatus as such, or the county, has no control over the public schools. The mayor of LA does not control the schools. Instead, the 7 members of the board of the Los Angeles Unified School District controls our public schools. LA County, largest county in the country by population wise, is 88 individual cities. Los Angeles is the largest of those cities, but Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, West Hollywood, Bell, Maywood, and LA Unified is about, I always forget, 24, 27, it's about 25 or 26 of those cities. So in my district, which I should mention goes from Westchester in the south to Woodland Hills in the north, to the ocean in the west, and to the East Hollywood in the east. And I have a few other carve outs. I have Toluca Lake, I have Topanga, but the bulk of my district is the west side and the West Valley. So Woodland Hills, Tarzana, Encino, Brentwood, Palisades, Mar Vista, Venice, Hollywood, Bel Air, Westwood, Marina Del Rey. And so LAUSD is, about 25, 26 of those cities in the county. We, in my district, it's mostly Los Angeles. I also have the city of West Hollywood. And there are 7 of us who are elected full-time to serve our constituents. Have about, a little under 1 million constituents, about 430,000 registered voters in Board District 4. And we hire and manage the superintendent. So Superintendent Austin Buettner, the board brought on back in 2018, and he's coming up on the end of his kind of first, potentially 3-year term. So that's a little bit about the structure. In Board District 4, we have about 150 schools, from preschool all the way to adult. Many people don't know that LA Unified runs an adult program with over 60,000 students. Last I checked, about 36% of our adult students were parents of K-12 students. So as we think about generational poverty and trying to educate the whole family, we not only have pre-K programs and of course K-12, but we have adult programs. And in your neck of the woods, the West Valley Occupational Center, we have everything from esthetician programs to computer coding, to ESL, to citizenship, to construction, to nursing. And those have been running throughout the pandemic. LA Unified as a whole is the 2nd largest school district in the country behind New York. We have, if you include our charter schools, we have more independent charter schools in LA Unified than anywhere in the country. If you include charter students, we have close to 700,000 students. We have over 60,000 employees. We're the largest employer, I believe, in the county. We're larger than Coke. We've run the 2nd largest transportation division behind Metro. We run the largest food provider. We're the largest landowner.
That's interesting, Nick, that you mentioned about landowners. If I can jump in, since we don't have much, a full of your time. I think the major thing that we're looking at with the number of schools we have around, we have a new directive that says we're going to be bringing students back in. A lot of controversy on that. Is that a finalized agreement at this point, or is there still some additional negotiations that have to go on with that? Is it finalized? It's really a yes or a no.
Yes, it is finalized.
Okay,
so
the kids are coming back to school, and this whole thing about the 6 feet versus 3 feet separation is causing people problems. But probably more importantly, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, that the students that are coming back in are really going to be not getting personalized attention from the teachers, but rather are going to be on basically Zoom teaching again, no different than they were getting at home. And so it seems like we've got nothing but a very expensive babysitters at an LA Unified School District property. Is that what's going on?
So John, you're almost right at the secondary, middle, and high school level, not at the elementary school level. So the limiting challenges for us and school districts throughout LA County, because the governing public health entity is actually not LAUSD, it's the county public health department. And there are still rules around cohorting and social distancing. You mentioned the 3-foot rule. That only changed a few days ago or last week. It used to be 6 feet. And so if you think of elementary, you can have stable cohorts, because you think of a second grade class, everyone's in the class. And so in that model, as students return as early as April 12th, in some cases, kids will be with their teachers in person. They'll have a full day at school, 8 to 4. Only half that day will be in a classroom with their teacher learning. The other half will be out doing homework, extracurriculars, arts, sports, playtime outside. And the reason it's only a half day of instruction is because the other half of the day, the teacher will be teaching another group of students. So there is the in-person interaction for elementary students.
Well, it seems that this is only going to go on for how long? It was just the end of the school year is what, in June?
End of the school year is June, yes, mid-June.
So this is only going to go on for a couple of months with the time. Is everybody coming back for summer school at this point, or is everybody off for summer school?
No, so we are offering summer school for every student. We're going to have in-person options and virtual options, everything from remediation for students who have fallen behind to enrichment. We have some great programs ready. And we also then will be voting next month on the school calendar, and we likely will be starting early to make up for some lost time. And so, my guess would be the school year will start April 10th, and we will at that point be able to implement the 3-foot rule. And we'll have, at least for elementary school, I'd like to think class would be as close to normal as possible. Now, masks, ventilation, use of outdoor space, but my hope would be we could have 100% of students back because of the social distancing.
For example, has got everybody that's back in one-on-one teaching. They're also under the guidelines too, I believe, with LA County. Why are we getting the short end of the stick from LA Unified School District? It seems like we're sort of having to do catch up. Let me ask you that one, but I got 2 other questions for you after that. So let you respond to that. Why are we stuck with this kind of second-class citizen with what we're doing with the school district?
Yeah, so it's a fair question, especially as we are in the Valley with other school districts and with independent schools. And I think, this is not just an LA problem. Around the country, Chicago doesn't have an agreement for middle and high school. San Francisco doesn't have an agreement for middle and high school.
Well, that brings me to the point of this. Who's been doing the negotiation with the Teachers Association? Have you been doing that negotiation, or is Austin been doing that?
So the board gives direction, and Austin has a team. We have a labor negotiation team that's been in the room with our unions. Now, we have a number of labor unions, and we had agreements months ago with all but one, all but the teachers union. So our bus drivers, our custodians, our principals, we've had agreements in place for months. It was only, and this might be one answer to your question, John, it was only a few weeks ago that we finalized an agreement with our teachers union that is the contour of a lot of this schedule.
That seems to be kind of strange to me that would wait that long, since we've been a year into this particular process, before we can get those kind of agreements. You knew this was coming out at some point in time. We're way behind the
Oh, completely, John. I agree. And I was asking back in July for a hybrid agreement, knowing that we might not have had the public health conditions to allow us to go back in August, but we should have had the agreement. And I'm with you there. It's kind of inexcusable that we wouldn't have had an agreement.
That kind of brings me to my confusion. Who does the teachers union serve? Is their primary concern the students and their education, or is their primary concern the teachers themselves? And I know you're not a member of that group, but what is your impression as to who's at the primary concern for the teachers union?
Well, I think their argument would be that a lot of those interests align, but their job, John, is to represent the interests of their teachers. And I don't begrudge them that. It's just incumbent on the school board to look out for students. And
that was my next question to you. Who do you serve? Are you serving the teachers? Are you serving the school district? Are you serving the students that are in it? Are you serving the parents in the area? Or who do you serve? Who's top at your list?
Of course, my constituents, which are the students and parents and voters, but I would say beyond that, students. And so to your earlier question, I don't begrudge the teachers union or any unions for looking out for their members. That is their job. What I think has been the imbalance that really fueled my campaign for office, and I did not run with the support of any of our unions, was that there needs to be a voice for parents and for students. Now, I'm one of 7 board members, and there have been a lot of votes in my tenure that has been 6-1, 4-3, 5-2. And so I did not carry the day in getting an agreement done months ago, but I agree with you that it needs to be done. It's one of the reasons I'm already asking the superintendent to make sure we're at the table for summer school, but for the fall, because we can't wait till August to have an agreement about what fall will look like.
Absolutely. And are you personally taking part in those negotiations? Are you there at the table? Do you stick your head in the door, or do you leave that strictly to Austin to do that?
We leave that strictly to Austin. Not been my experience since I've been a board member that board members are at the table. We have negotiating teams. But you bring up a fair question. If things aren't moving along, maybe we have to pop our virtual head in there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they've already set you've already set a precedent that you guys are dragging feet along in this time period. We're a year into this whole thing now, and to just finally have an agreement with the teachers saying, listen, we go back in, this is what we're going to do, and it still isn't really clear, seems to be nonsense to me, and doesn't seem to be bestly serving the students. We have a lot of listen, there's a controversy out there whether or not this is mentally helpful to the students or it's hurting the students, and we certainly know, if nothing else, it's hurting the parents, because the parents don't know what the heck to do.
Well, you've also, John, you bring up a great point that there was a lot of talk, especially from the unions, around is it safe to reopen schools? But there wasn't enough talk about is it safe to keep schools closed when we think of the mental health toll on students and the learning loss. And so, I think if folks agree with your perspective, I'd encourage them to email me and the board and the teachers union, because it's important that we hear, not just from the loudest institutional voices, but we hear from the community about the need to get kids back in school and the need to get an agreement for the fall as soon as possible.
Okay, well, you'll certainly hear from us on that, as you well know. That's kind of a tough situation where we don't like this concept of our students just basically being babysitted. Listen, I've got one of my grandkids is in law school, and he's having to learn his classes from virtual. That's almost an impossibility to learn constitutional law from a virtual. You don't have that interaction that's going on. And part of what we do as lawyers is that interaction of being able to stand on your 2 feet and argue something. You can't really do that in Zoom. And not having the camaraderie of your students around with you, not having a chance for you to be, every time you raise your hand, you're a little bit nervous of whether or not you're going to come up with the right answer, whether or not somebody's going to make fun of you, whatever. It's part of the training. It's part of our socialization. That's been gone from these students for a full year, and at the most tender years of their development. And I would think that you and the others should be jumping up and down going, we can't have this anymore. This is going to stop.
Yeah, I think schools should be the last thing to close and the first things to open. And that hasn't been the case in LA. It's not only the result of a late agreement with the teachers union, but 2 or 3 times since March, we had opened as a county card rooms and bars and restaurants before schools were even cleared to open. And I think that's important to remember too, is that it was only late February that we even got the go ahead to open. So are we 2 months too late? In my opinion, we are. But we couldn't have reopened before February per county regulations. And that was not on the school district. That was on county public health and the board of supervisors.
Well, I think we all can recognize there's probably a much more active role we all should have taken, even with the county, on things that have gone on. Some of the stuff we look at in hindsight is going to be able to teach us, I think, unfortunately, some lessons we need to know for the future too. Let me move on for a moment then to another subject, which is bothering some people because of when we do come back to school. The defunding of the police. Where were you on the defunding of the police with the LA Unified School District? Were you thumbs up or thumbs down?
So I supported it because I thought that the school police department, really as distinct from an LA police department, we had the largest school police force in the country at a time when we were losing students and shuttering school sites, and it didn't align with the role of the police. So my belief on this is simple. There's a role for school police in protecting life and property around a school, football games, patrolling your neighborhoods. There shouldn't be a role for school police walking hallways and arresting students for doing things that kids do, talking back to their teacher, being late to class. That conflation was what bothered me. And it wasn't the fault of our school police department. It was the fault of a lot of our other employees who picked up the phone and would say, oh, this kid's not acting correctly, get involved. And so kids were getting too involved with the police department. So what I supported and what we've crafted at LUSD is we have coverage, and actually even more coverage for evenings and nights and weekends. And we're removing police officers from roaming the campus when that really is a role, I think, and this is what's true in Las Virgenes, it's what's true in private school, counselors, psychologists who are there to help students.
Well, you know, why wasn't that the case to it? Instead of just saying, let's defund the police at that point, why don't we put into a second staff when they call and say, listen, there's somebody in the classroom that's giving us a problem. The first person that shows up is not a uniformed policeman with a gun on his shoulder, but rather is somebody else to try to calm them down and see what's going to go on. But for that officer to be available if it's needed, if that has the training on how to use extensive force if it's necessary under the circumstances. And I recognize, listen, there's videos all over the internet of some of the officers going crazy on things, and power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, whatever. But nonetheless, we've got students, we have an environment going on where people can walk into schools and can do bad things in those locations that don't belong there. And we need to have some protection for our students that are there. They need to know they're protected. But by the same token, we should be able to have appropriate number of police to be properly funded with that, properly educated, but also to have other staff members that are needed so that things don't get escalated. Where do you stand on that?
So I think you're right. And, I think the challenge is when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. And so the problem is that the district had historically invested over the last decade or two in school policing and not in mental health. And so one example is right before I got on the board, our school police department had, like Humvee looking vehicles and grenade launchers. And I don't know that, even you give me the worst behaved 18-year-old in a class, a school district, and Las Virgenes, I tell you, does not have it. Those types of devices. So I think what we need to do is do exactly what you're talking about. That's why
there's an argument to be said that that type of a presence, if you will, stops those that might be outside of the environment from coming into it. We found that during the Olympics when we were here. The fact we had police on every single solitary corner that didn't really know what they were going to be doing because they weren't really trained for that, but their mere presence was enough to act as a deterrent. Sometimes those visualizations of what's there stops somebody from coming onto the campus.
And John, I just, it's unfortunate that a lot of the horrific incidents of the last few years, Parkland, there was a school police officer there. Obviously, the tragedy in Boulder a couple of days ago, there was a police officer. And so, there is a deterrent effect. It's one of the reasons why we've also invested in security cameras at schools and single buzzer entry systems. And I have a task force after I passed a resolution after Parkland to work with communities on school safety. I believe that the plan the board has put forward, which still has a school police presence, roaming communities, no more than a few minutes away, strikes the right balance of protecting schools, but also making sure on campus students have the mental health supports. Now, we're an underfunded school district. I wish we could do both. We can't. And so budgeting is about choices. Maybe in the future when we have more resources.
Well, now you just got a whole bunch of budget monies coming to you out of the new bill, that $1.9 trillion bill. You're going to get a whole bunch of funding out of that. You got some stuff coming in from the state. You should be flush with monies at this particular point. Why are we crying poverty again at this point from the school district?
Oh, I'm not trying to cry poverty. I just think that there's, in all the pandemic response, we're not hearing a lot for the need for necessarily more police officers. And these decisions were made before we were getting that influx of funding. We're actually at a great place where we can invest in psychiatric social workers for every school, mental health support, and yes, security upgrades, not only, police presence, but again, those things that I think even do a better job in certain instances at keeping kids safe, which is single buzzer entry systems, security cameras, other use of deterrence. And I should say, we also need to work with the city, because there are things outside of our jurisdiction, like crossing guards, like traffic incidents, like homelessness, where our school police department is being pulled in a lot of different ways, and we need the support of other municipalities.
Well, we'll see how this goes moving forward with it. It's going to be interesting, and I hope that we can get your commitment that you're going to do everything that you can find in your power to be very much on top of making sure that those students are going to be safe and we have a safe environment for them. And then when they start getting back into school, I mean, heaven forbid something ends up happening, we're going to come back and point to you and going, Nick, we should have had more security that was out there. Why did you vote to defund this stuff? And that's going to hurt your conscience too.
Yeah, security and safety is our North Star. And again, I just would point you really tragically to Parkland. There was a school police officer. And so there's a lot more we have to do. And it starts with, one of the things that we've done is a new incident reporting system where students can report things anonymously. And that, anonymous tip line has led to a lot of intervention. I think that experts, including our law enforcement presence, would tell you that the best way to prevent, the vast majority of school shootings are people who have a connection to the school, disgruntled students or alums or faculty. And the best way to prevent that is relationship building. I'm confident that the work we're doing is not making kids less safe. I wouldn't vote for anything that I thought reduced safety on school campuses.
All right, let's move over, if we may, to the properties. We had expected we'd have you probably for a little bit longer period of time, but let's see if we get some of this in, and forgive me for taking up time for those that are listening on these questions, because sometimes it takes a little bit more time to get all the general questions. AB 3308 has been what's been sticking in our craw for a bit of time. For those that don't know, 3308 provides that the LA Unified School District can actually sell those unused properties. Let me back up. Can use those unfulfilled properties for additional housing. Initially, it started out for housing for LA Unified School District members. Then it moved over and got amended to be where it would be any city employees. And now it's been amended over to where it could be anybody who can walk and chew gum at the same time, and maybe not even have to be able to chew gum. So there are a number of schools out in our district that are vacant at this point. Three of them particularly that we look at is Hughes, we look at Oso, and look at Collins. Those are the three that have shown up on a list of possible ones that are being studied to be put up for auction. Actually, talking about doing some swapping. We'll have to discuss that at a later point. I have some problems with whether or not the statute allows that for swapping to be done. But bottom line is the following, that if LA Unified School District so decide, they could take the Collins property and decide to swap it with a developer who's got another piece of property down in South Central LA that the LA Unified Board may decide that they need to have extra room to expand their school down there. The property up here at Oso gets transferred over to the developer. The school has no longer any control over that. The developer could then go in and develop whatever's going to be appropriate at that particular location, put up housing for anybody. So what is now a school property, Oso or Collins or Hughes at this particular point, could end up being a large community apartment complex development where it was intended as being a school. The next thing, just for background to people to understand, is that we have got a number of developments that are coming into our particular area, especially out of the Warner Center. We probably have within the next few years about 4,000 residents that'll be coming online. We need to have a school out here. And Nick, you know, with our previous discussions with you and with other board members, that the answer has been, we don't need a new school. We have enough openings in other schools. We need to fill up those other schools instead. I read in that one, if you will, busing. And if we don't have, if a student can't find a place at Oso or at Collins that lives in the Warner Center new apartments, but yet there's an opening that is someplace in the eastern part of the valley, they can go there because you can plug them into that location. Or those parents moving into that location are not going to go there. They're going to go over to Calabasas and move there instead. What say you? Where are you on this 3308 situation? Where are you on getting those three properties removed from that list so we'll have some properties we can look at in the future to make sure we're going to have proper schools out here?
Yeah, so I'll start by being clear. You know, we've never considered those three campuses for multifamily housing to be built by us or others. What we have, what we have started to do is to say that, it's irresponsible from the stewardship of public funds and land to sit on property for 30 plus years that has been closed. Now, LA Unified demographics have shifted. We've lost 100,000 students in the last 10 years, such that we have, I think by my last count, 1,000 empty seats in the Woodland Hills area. Now, we understand, I know the district's demographers are talking to you all and making sure we have the most accurate counts, even projecting for Warner Center, but everybody I've asked, and I'm not an expert in this, but I turn to our facilities, our demographers, et cetera, who have told us that given the existing capacity, not in Van Nuys but in Woodland Hills, that we have 1,000 seats. That being said, we're going to continue to move forward with community engagement. I think that we heard the WHO and others loud and clear in late last year when there's a chicken and egg problem because we have to kind of authorize district staff to do the community engagement. And when those properties were on a list, there was a lot of concern. And so we're back to the drawing board and we'll likely have more engagement with your community in the coming.
Well, Nick, that's been sort of the problem. As you know, we did a Freedom of Information Act, a Public Records Act request for the demographics that you guys have looked at on making the determination of what property should go on that. They were dismal. They were such a disappointment that's what your demographic people are doing. Did you see those demographics? Do you support them as being valid demographics to have supported what they were doing with that? Or do you understand that those demographics were so lacking in any kind of details to be able to make any kind of decisions at all? Where do you stand on those demographics? Do you recognize they're problematic?
Well, I don't know that I've looked at them most recently. I know that you've met with our team and my staff and Shelly, Colleen, and Dennis, and Aaron, and and we'll continue to. I mean, if the suggestion is that our demographers aren't accurate, then as the board member, I need to look into that. But
it was terrible. It was terrible, Nick. You got to go take a look at that. It was to put those properties on based upon those demographics is inappropriate. Those three properties should be pulled off. There's no reason for them to be on that list.
Well, and my understanding is that they won't be on the next iteration of the list. We're going to continue to do more engagement, but I do, I think that keeping schools when there's existing capacity, and again, if you're disputing the demographics, we should look at it. We can also build on existing campuses, and I think we have a responsibility to constituents and to taxpayers to not sit on valuable land that we're just actually expending money on for maintenance and property tax every year.
I totally agree with you on that. So I understand what you just said, that they're going to pull those 3 properties off of the next list?
I don't think, yes, you will not see those 3 properties on the next list.
All right, so those properties then, as far as you're concerned, are not up for trading, horse trading under the next list at this point?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think we realize we need to do more engagement and look at those numbers so that you won't see these properties on the list.
All right, then let's take another step to it, which has been something that doesn't make any sense to me. And maybe you can enlighten us all. There is fees that are paid by every developer that comes into the Warner Center area. And as you well know, under the new 2035 specific plan, we've decided to go to high density in downtown Woodland Hills, if you will. That's where we're going to get about 4,000 residents that are going to come into that location in the next few years. We have fees that are paid by them that are in the millions of dollars that have been paid into them. Westfield has put in tons of money into those things. We have those properties now that are there. It seems most logical that if we were to take just those monies that were provided by those funds that were there, not taking anything else away from the budgets, not anything that's coming in from the state or many other taxes, but just from those mitigation fees alone, that there's sufficient funds to be able to start doing serious development on at least one school at the Oso property or the Collins property, and start right now with getting those plans done, because as soon as it's going to take a couple of years for that to happen, it's going to take a couple of years for this, that we get those schools done now.
John, I think the impasse we're at the district, and this isn't just me. This is board member Schmerelson. It's all of our team. They've stood by the work. You know, our demographic team has an accuracy rate of 0.5% over the last 2 decades, and there's nobody in the district, again, including my colleague Scott Schmerelson, who thinks that we need to build more on these campuses when we have 1,000 seats and capacity to build on nearby Woodland Hills Elementary Schools. Woodland Hills.
This is a bootstrap argument, though. Here's what the problem is. If you guys don't build a school out here, guess what ends up happening? People with school-age kids don't move into the area, and therefore you turn around and say, see, we didn't need any students that are here. Would you at least agree with me that the fact that there's a local school that's available is an attractive issue for people who want to move into an area? Would you agree with that?
Of course.
Would you also agree that if a person is going to be moving into an area and they're required to bus their students to another location, that is a negative for them coming in and moving into that area?
My argument, John, is that there wouldn't be busing involved, that the existing Woodland Hills community would have space at the existing elementary schools. And if not, we would build up on those elementary schools. And that's what we've done historically. We've done it in my district and in other areas where we'll build on existing capacity. Because again, there's just nobody internally who thinks that right now that this is a good idea to build kind of a school for a phantom population.
Well, we need to find some way of being able to communicate with them and open up their eyes to it. Nick, I would ask for your help in that regard, so we know who we should be talking to, because we're totally convinced that this is an appropriate thing to do.
You know, you have my help and commitment to meeting. I think I've brokered over the course of my 3 or 4 years, you know, maybe half a dozen times where we've shared information. And so we'll keep the lines of communication going. I'm a learner. I will always look into information, but right now, no one is convinced that this is needed. At the same time, we heard the community that, you know, thinking about a swap without doing more engagement is not appropriate too. So the conversations will continue. No action is being taken anytime soon.
We have to rely upon you on that, because those are in your district, and everybody's going to turn to you on the board and say, Nick, what do you want to do? Because that's the appropriate. Again,
yeah. So I'm not trying to be coy. At this point, I'm not prepared to support building elementary school. I'd like to look at other utilization of the land, but you know, I'm keeping dialogue open with the community to make sure that we're not doing something that's inappropriate for that community. That doesn't mean that I think a school is appropriate. It just means that I won't do anything that is inappropriate.
Well, very good. We don't have you for a few more minutes. Shelley, have you got some questions to jump in here?
Yes, thanks, Nick. As John pointed out in the demographics we received, it showed that there has been zero accounting for any growth in the Warner Center. And if I go back to your 2020 LAUSD developer fee justification study, your own people said that they expect 19,000 living units. And if they multiplied that by 0.4370 students per household, LAUSD came up with 8,000 new students from the Warner Center alone. That's not just 1,000 students that can be accounted for. And add to that, this year alone in 2021, there were over 300 kids, almost all from the West Valley, that requested to be permitted into Las Virgenes. So LAUSD, number one, the demographics are 100% faulty. Not one new student has been accounted for. And John mentioned the 4,000. Right now, there's 10,000 new living units on the pipeline, in addition to all the commercial property, the stadium, which the employees have a right to put their kids in school. So you're saying you're not supporting a new school, but I want to just clarify, what other types of developments would you be supporting on those school properties?
Well, it's a fair question, Shelley. I think like we've done for the last few years, if we need to go tit for tat and look at the demographic data, I'm not disputing what's not in front of me. And if that's the case and the district is being internally inconsistent, we of course need to get to the bottom of that. I think that like when we've looked at this land, we've discussed with the local district everything from just utilizing it as a community park to performing arts center for the schools in the valley to field space. We're going to be building, we have a really expensive $140 million comprehensive modernization of Taft that's going to take a few years. There's been talk about using some of these properties as field space for students who won't have the same access at Taft. There would be talk, if it was a swap, to just use single home development. So in a community like Oso, just build more single family homes. But the district would then generate revenue from that property to shore up other areas. So those are the types of things that I would deem appropriate. Again, that's not to say I don't think a school is appropriate, given that there was a school historically, but the question is really around whether it's needed. And again, everyone internally in the district is saying it's not, but I remain open to being convinced. If as you say, Shelley, some of the numbers don't check out, we'll definitely look into that.
Right, and the mitigation fees that John mentioned, just on the approved 10,000 units that are going up now, times the $4.08 a square foot that the developers are paying as mitigation fees, that alone's 41 million. If Warner Center is built out to the 26,000 units, that's over $133 million in mitigation fees just for residential units. And certainly the idea of the developers paying those fees to help mitigate the impact on our local schools that their development has, and LAUSD is taking those and using them elsewhere. And then on top of that is taking away our school properties, as you can imagine, would not fit well.
And Shai, I don't think it's fair to say taking away the school properties under my watch. The schools have been closed for 30, 40 years. But what I will say is another challenge, and this was very salient at Woodland Hills Academy last year, is that we had trouble getting a science teacher because the cost of living has pushed people out of LA. And so the other thing the district is looking at doing, not necessarily with these properties, but John alluded to this, is building, not homeless or low income housing. I think that gets conflated, but employee housing for public servants, for teachers, for firefighters, for cops, because they can't afford to live in our communities anymore. And the fact that Woodland Hills Middle School could not get a science teacher because we couldn't have one that lived in the West Valley is problematic. And so we're also looking at our underutilized assets throughout the district to figure out how can we also support a need. People will go to Las Virgenes if there's not a science teacher in their class too.
Nick, as you know, there's been discussions about that, and most of the school teachers would not be able to qualify to be able to come into those housings that are there. And so that, say, listen, we're going to put teachers in there, really is putting out a carrot for us to start walking that direction.
The way, John, some of these new state laws are working, and with our different financing, we are able to, you're right, some of the stuff that district has built, teachers are priced out, but there's new legislation that would enable teachers and other middle income earners like cops and firefighters to live there.
Speaking of legislation, would you support keeping those development funds here in this particular district in the West Valley so that we can utilize them in the future here, as opposed to all those fees going back downtown and being utilized for whatever things the entire board decides to do?
Yeah, I mean, the fees should be used where they're needed, and more students in Woodland Hills means that we would need.
No, that's not fair. Not where they're needed, but where they were generated at. And listen, you can make a very good case that in South Central that you're going to far need more help down there than what you're going to ever need in the West Valley. I can understand that case can be made, but nevertheless, the impact that's on our community, those fees are being generated here. It seems to me that those fees should stay here in this community where they were generated and being used in those demographic areas, as opposed to going downtown where you got 6 other people who are going to try to pull them out of your hands and put them in their particular district.
Yeah, it's a good point, John. It's one of the reasons I've been really supporting our decentralization, our new community of schools model, so that the West Valley kind of has their own mini district. And we were just talking at the board committee that I was chairing yesterday about more local control. So I think it's it's a fair point, and one that I'll take under advisement, that you're right. There are, just like students that are generating revenue in the West Valley should keep that revenue. Probably the same goes for developer fees.
I would take a look at that and see. We hate to spend the time trying to go to state legislature and get that done. It seems it can be done by just MOUs out of you guys and agreements amongst yourselves. Say, listen, you just keep the accounting. This is what's generated. This is what stays here. Let's find a place to use it and invest it in our community. Come back into the investments here. Nick, do we have you some more time, or we're going to lose you here?
I can say a couple. Let's do a couple more questions, and then unfortunately,
Kelly, go ahead and put you back up. Got some more that you're even seeing from people coming in outside or from your own.
I just want to clarify one thing there. When is the motion, do you know, coming back up on the proposal of the then 10 properties? Is it coming back on the April school meeting to be presented? Do you know?
I will make sure that Rachel lets you all know. I don't know. I haven't seen the agenda yet. I believe it might be, April. Another priority of mine that goes with this decentralization is selling Beaudry, our district headquarters, because I don't think we need a 30-story office building downtown as we're trying to invest more in communities. That might be on the April agenda. This might be on the May agenda. My understanding is that it's going to be more, it's going to be a little higher level in exploring the use of our underutilized assets without specifying these 3 properties. So we will let you know. I know that was a mistake last time where you all heard about it, in part because I only heard about it the day or two before, but we will make sure we let you know when that's on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. And then again, I think the community appreciates your understanding of our concern over the idea of exchange of a property, because as I think Mr. Schmerlson said at the board meeting in November, once it's given to a developer, LAUSD has no say whatsoever on what is put into that community. And that could be devastating. For example, like a community like Oso, which is in a hilly, isolated, single family neighborhood. You swap that property to developer, LAUSD says, well, we can't control what the developer puts, and that can completely devastate a neighborhood.
Yeah, and Shelley, I know you're monitoring questions, but I want to note that, one of the comments in the chat that just came in from Raina, the developer fees you're talking about, there are also existing schools, that are well in disrepair. I shouldn't say disrepair, as a technical term, but we have over 100 schools in LA Unified that are over 100 years old. So I think when it comes to resources that we're getting either from the relief dollars or the new bond that was passed with over 71% of the vote, and thank you to those who supported that, and also any developer fees that, it's not fair to just say, oh, we'll spend $130 million to build a new school on the Oso site, because there are a lot of existing schools, Calvert and Calabash and Woodland Hills, that could use infrastructure upgrades and improvements. So
I think that no one would dispute that at all as a good use of some of those fees. Absolutely.
Great.
Aaron, there's some questions that are in
a quick one too. These new school district, the local school district concept you've got, where is that in the pipeline? Is that being finalized at this stage? I know I just took a look at the map the other day, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it actually began in earnest July 1st. And so if we haven't connected the who with Ramon Corley, who is the community schools administrator for our Taft community, I'll make sure that Rachel on my team does that, because it's already starting. And obviously this year was unlike any other with the pandemic, but we're really trying to build out how that autonomy will look. So they exist, and we'll make sure, John, we connect you.
Yeah, I think that's important for us to take a look at what's going on with that. I think that back in the old secession days, we also were looking at breaking up LA Unified School District. It's just huge, and it's. I mean, just take a look at your district alone. For you to be able to handle all the different issues that are going on in your district is mind-boggling. So we appreciate the fact that we might have to have some more localized districting to be able to do something and have some more local autonomy and control over those particular areas, so that there can be the input for the communities. I think that becomes extremely important. Aaron, Shelley, got some more questions from the group that's out there?
There are some questions, and one of the questions is relevant to something that Nick just touched upon. I will mention just real quick, Nick, you mentioned Calabash. That just is getting and is almost completed a $20 million renovation. It looks like it's a brand new state-of-the-art school. So that's nice. Wish that could be done with every school. Yep. So this question's from Raina McCaughey, who I believe is the neighborhood council education chair. So glad to see you here, Raina. You touched upon this a little bit, Nick. In your opinion, should LAUSD be divided into smaller groups into a more manageable district instead of addressing serious concerns within our schools? The district seems to simply create additional committee over existing committees and more committees. It is a bureaucratic nightmare. Where is the accountability?
Yes, and so I like to be realistic about this one because, as John just said, there have been many attempts at breaking up LA Unified. When then mayoral candidate Bob Hertzberg was running, he talked about breaking up the district. That led then candidate Villaraigosa to say he was going to take over the school district, which he had attempted to do. So I don't like to peddle false hope by saying yes, break up the district, because legally it's proven hard. But I think that we should get as close to that as possible. And that's why I've really supported this decentralized model where we have now 42 communities of schools. And as we're funding schools and as we're trying to sell Beaudry, which I think is going to be on our agenda, like I said, in April, we're really trying to become, as I phrase it, a system of schools and not a school system. The decisions we make in Woodland Hills are going to look different than Brentwood, and they're going to look different than where I taught in Watts. And so we're starting to see the value in this as we just have these community of schools administrators who are like mini superintendents who are able to make decisions more quickly. But this, again, has only been in place since July. We have a lot more work to do. And I think, sometimes you have to kind of add the layer to get rid of the other layers. And so I hear the concern that right now we've got maybe too many, bureaucrats in the equation, if you will. And I do apologize that I have to hop to another town hall, but you know where to find me. I appreciate your advocacy, even when we don't agree. I think we have the same end in mind. And Rachel can put in the chat, my contact information, whether it's about individual school issues, reopening, or these larger issues. You definitely have my commitment to continue engaging you all.
Well, Nick, we deeply appreciate your coming on and taking on the questions. We're depending upon you. I mean, you are our link. You and Scott are the only ones we've got out here, and it's an overwhelming process to go through. And we're looking at our kids. We're looking at what we can do with them, and it's going to be the best service of them. And a lot of the stuff we've seen, I think, over this past year makes us skeptical that the school district is able to do what they need to be doing because it's just so large. Maybe these centralized locations might be something to take a much more serious look at. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your service to our community. We ask you to continue to keep that contact with us so that we know what's going on, and to keep an open mind and an open ear to us to see how you're able to best serve our community as well in that process. So Definitely. Thank you very much for that. We'll certainly talk again, I'm sure.
Thank you, John. And as you asked me earlier, who do I work for? Who am I accountable? And the answer is you all. So appreciate you giving me the opportunity to serve and to join you tonight, and I look forward to talking again soon.
That sounds good. For the rest of you that are still online, say goodnight to you, Nick. For the rest of you that are online, hang in there. We're going to go over some more questions and what have you with our group, especially with Shelley and with Aaron. Shelley, specifically with you, I want to bring you back in to talk about some of the stuff that's going on, and also with what you've heard from Nick tonight, and what you like, what you don't like concerning that, and especially if we've got some more questions that are out there that you might be able to give some assistance to. For those of you who don't know, Shelley has been extremely involved with this and put together a coalition of a number of different residents around the West Valley area when we started looking at these properties and what was going to go on with them. And within a period of roughly a couple of days, was able to muster up about over 1,000 signatures on petitions to make sure that this is going to be properly protected. So let's make sure that we've got some time to be able to spend with this. Shelley, I got you on. Talk to me, talk to the rest of us too about what you've learned, what things are going on, and especially about those demographics, what they try to use as those demographics, try to jam down our throats. That Freedom of Information Act that we did on them to find out what they were utilizing was an eye-opener. These experts were basically saying to us, we've looked at this, we've studied it, we've got our people down here that are highly paid professionals, and as a result, they've done their statistical analysis, and their statistical analysis says, we have to do something with those properties. When we looked at those statistics, we had some serious head scratching that went on. Shelley, what do you know, and why do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. When we received the report and we all took a look at it and had others take a look at it, they had not accounted for any growth in the Warner Center at all. I mean, they took a look at blank areas in Warner Center and said no new students from that area. Well, there was no development in that area, essentially, that they were saying there were no new students. And I think it's been difficult for Nick and Scott and I think the rest of the school board to be told that our demographics department says we don't need any additional schools. And so they believe that. And I think we have to keep pushing with the idea that the demographics are incorrect, because based on their 2020 fee study, they estimate 8,000 new kids coming in based on the Warner Center specific plan. So if in their own fee justification study, they estimate 8,000, it's not unheard of for us to be estimating between 4,000 to 5,000 new students. And certainly those can't be accommodated in the existing schools. Parents don't want their playgrounds taken away with bungalows. They don't want their kids bused to other schools.
Yeah, I think what's strange to me too is to take a look here, if I may. This is Nick's district. You see in white. You'll see the little red circle up there. The little red circle is us. That's how much there is in Nick's district for him to be looking at and trying to take control of. He runs all the way back down, and all these areas in here is his district. We're up in here. We're just a little small annoyance to him by comparison to what some of the other areas might be. But you'll also notice here that we've got, these are empty schools that are here. The Hughes location, the Collins location, and the Oso. Oso and Collins are directly within his district. Scott's district is in the upper portion of it and the brown portion of that. So we have a fight on our hands to make sure that both of our representatives understand that what we're going to do in the Warner Center area, which is basically right in here, that area right through in here with the Warner Center development, we've got to do some serious negotiating with them to make sure that we're going to have the appropriate developments out there. Otherwise, what's going to happen is just what they have said. You know, we've done the statistics and we don't need any schools here. And as time goes on, there won't be any students coming into the area because they'll all be over in Calabasas or moving to other locations. And that again is a bootstrap argument to me. And to watch these guys and the stuff they end up doing, I think is a problem for us, and it will be continuing to be a problem for us over the years. So
well, I think that's correct, because I take a look at, besides the Warner Center growth, most of our neighborhoods, whether it's in Scott's area or Nick's area, every new home that's sold in my neighborhood is sold to a young family. And the first question is, where are the schools? And I would say the majority of families are more and more sending their kids to Las Virgenes. And as we said before, LAUSD needs to be future thinking. We've got the Century City of the Valley being built. We've got new housing developments abutting to the Warner Center, and none of that is being accounted for. And once the school properties are gone, they're gone.
Take a look at here. This is the development chart. For those of you who have not taken a look at what we've got going on here, these are the ones that are being worked on. These are the ones that either are occupied, the entitlements that are there. For example, the promenade, which won't be coming online for about 2 years, we'll have 1,400 residents coming in that alone. But you can see all those that have entitlements, those that are occupied, those that are under construction. Okay, these are the numbers that we have of the properties that are going to be coming in the future in our locations. They are huge. And when we start looking at that for the future, those statistics that LA Unified School District is looking at is not planning for the future for us, but rather just planning for what's been in the past. And that's where I think we all talk to them down there. We tried to say to them, listen, think out of the box. You guys have been looking at what you've done in the past, and you think backwards on stuff. You don't look forward and try to look at those projections. Are you satisfied, Shelley, that we're going to be able to do something with some of these bean counters that are downtown to try to get them to actually listen?
I can't say for sure, but I think we have to keep pursuing this path with charts like you just show. I know the WHO has been asked to provide demographic information, just as you just showed, to the facilities department in LAUSD, to Nick's office.
And those stats, by the way, came to us from Dennis DiBiase,
Yes.
one of our board members, who's worked really hard on this stuff too. Dennis, we thank you for that as well, for putting that time in.
I think it was interesting where, Nick mentioned about not doing the swaps. That was a little unclear, because they said, well, we would only want single family housing done. When they were pressed on that issue before, there were two answers. One is, if we restrict what can be put on the properties to a developer, such as you may only build single family homes, we were told that then devalues the property. If we restrict what a developer could put, and we don't want to do that. And number two, they said, once we swap a property, we're out of it. LAUSD is not in the business of restricting what a developer builds once it's their own property. And then at the community Zoom meetings, the community was told, well, if there's a developer swap, the developer could only build what's appropriate for the neighborhood. And I think that comment is the most important disingenuous comment, because anything can be rezoned for high density housing.
This should be scaring the heck out of those people who live around those particular properties as to what's going to go on. The assault that's going on from Sacramento to try to change the single family development. And just so you know, they're trying to take away all the permitting processes to that, where they take in comments from the outside community and the appeal process. If that's taken away and those properties from LA Unified School District are given up to developers, those developers basically will be able to come in under the new laws and build just about anything they want to build on those properties without having the input from the community and having the appeals that we presently have. So those become problematic to it. I do see that we have some hands that are up. If those are, I'm going to take a wild shot at actually allowing some outside questions, since we've got some time and some of our members that are up there, and see what the questions are. By the way, one of the questions, Shelley, was how can as a community can we help? I would suggest that they get in touch with you specifically, so that you can start getting together a good group, because we need to have a writing campaign that's going to go on. There will be hearings that will be coming up. There will be a need for people to make statements at the board hearings for LA Unified School District. Those are all being done by websites now. But if you would get a hold of Shelley and let her know. Shelley, I don't think we have got your email up. We pulled down emails on everybody for a period of time because we were getting inundated with some problem people at one point. Do you feel comfortable putting your email back out?
Well, I think if they reach out to you through who, then you can.
I think that does well. You'll find on the website, go over to whho.com. You'll find my email link there. It's two links that are there. There's one that's an easy one, which is just john@whho.com. That will get to me. Or the one that comes into my office or directly to me is John M. Walker at earthlink.net. You can get that off of our website, but do go to the website. We'll look at some things that are there. And then
I just also wanted to say that anyone can go to LAUSD board agenda, and 3 days prior to the 1 o'clock meeting, which is usually the second Tuesday or Wednesday of the month, 3 days prior, they will post the agenda. And then 24 hours before, they open up only 7 slots to people who want to comment on any particular agenda item.
Oh, they do just 7?
Just 7 is the new rule now.
Well, we'll have to see if we can do something about that new rule.
Right. So anybody can check what's on the agenda. I suggest we all check and see what's coming up on the April agenda.
And we'll try to, if we can. For those of you who are not members of the organization, please give me your emails. That's one of the ways. If there's something that's coming up that's an emergency like that we need people to join in or to write letters, we will do so by the emails to you and let you know if there's a problem. So please do that. I see that Paul, you've got your hand up. I'm gonna take a shot and see if we can get some questions coming on from some people. Paul just put his hand down. Okay, Rena, I see you're there. I'm gonna let you unmute yourself.
Thank
Rena,
you.
you there?
Yes, thank you, John. Nice to meet you. My question has to do with joining the WHO. I've looked at the website and I was wondering, do you have any other way that we can make a payment directly instead of sending a check?
We don't at the present time, but we're going to. That's not really up at the present moment. So we've been sort of old school with that, and with all these changeovers with everything else, it's my problem of not getting that up on that to do it by credit cards. But bottom line right now, it's just doing it by that. If anybody gets nervous about it, you can always put the $25 in an envelope and drop it off at my office, and we'll get to us that way.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So I wish there was something better that we could do with that right now, but that will end up happening soon. We're inundated with a lot of stuff that's been going on with the LA Unified School District, with the promenade, and with some of these developments have been going on. So that's sort of been a little bit further down on our to-do list, but we'll get that done. We have some modifications to be done to our website too, and those things will be taken care of as well. So Rena, thank you for that. We appreciate it. Paul, I see you got your hand was up. You can unmute yourself, Paul.
All right, can you hear me?
we can.
Yeah, so going off of Rina's question, I think you might be able to share your Venmo. That might be easy. You don't have to set up like a merchant account. I don't know if you know what a Venmo is, but that's easy to, because I wanted to join as well, but it was just tough to send a letter and stuff. But that's one way. And the other question I had is, he said single family home on this property. I mean, who's going to build it? Is LAUSD going to build it? Or are they going to have other people build it?
No, the swap situation on it, Paul, is just that. One of the things that LA Unified School District sort of seems to want to parade in front of everybody is they're going to be able to make a lot of monies off of these things, and that's really not the case. What's ended up happening is that in that process, they're going to get a one-time swap. In other words, no money comes into LA Unified School District at all. What happens is they'll take the Oso property as an example. Hopefully, this never happened, and say to a developer, "Listen, we need." The Oso property is, I don't know what the sizes are. Forgive me on this one. I remember them.
7 acres.
It's 5 acres in size. We'll tell you what, those acres are worth X number of dollars. We want a property that's down close to one of our schools, downtown Los Angeles, of a similar value in that property. Buy that particular property and swap it with us. And then they swap back those properties. So the developer gets the Oso property. LA Unified School District gets no money. All they get is the property that's in the other location. The new developer comes in, they make the application to do their building and put in whatever they want to put in. And again, if the state legislature has anything to say about it, there will not be the community input like we presently have. The zoning issues will be changed dramatically at that point. That's a whole other fight that we've got going on. And we're going to deal with that when we get into the May and June, our webinars in May and June, so that you know what's going to go on with some of that legislation. Some are pretty tough. You can take a look at SB 10 and SB 5, SB 15. A few others are up in the state legislature that are really going to cause us some problems. So we'll see what those go, but we'll educate you on those too on that. Paul, does that help?
And John,
Oh, yes,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to add in, LAUSD has done 3 other projects, Sage, Selma, and Norwood, where those were their first ventures into employee housing that failed because they couldn't restrict who lived in them because they used tax credits and et cetera. But what they did in those examples is they gave, for example, bridge housing or affordable housing, the developer, they gave them a 66-year lease, and they got the payments on the lease, and they're also getting a percentage of the rent every month. So they've also done that arrangement where they are profiting. That's not an exchange. That's when, they're just saying, here, build on this piece of our land. And so they're getting paid 2 ways on those 3 past projects that they've done.
It's an interesting process to that. We'll see. Paul, did I answer your question? Any more questions from you?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's other ways that the community could buy it, or we can raise money from investors, because I work in real estate and know a lot of people would love to buy a 7-acre property in Woodland Hills.
Well, that's sort of interesting that we have bought it. That was bought with our tax monies. Those tax monies went to the school district, and the school district bought it for us to be utilized for educational purposes. And that's what we've really been harping on them for this period of time is, will you agree to utilize the schools for educational purposes only? That's what they're there for. They're not there to put, to put supplies on or to use for homeless encampments or for anything else. They're supposed to be for educational purposes. That's what we paid the monies in for the taxes for us to do. And so we have to make sure that ends up getting done.
Okay, thanks.
Angela, I see you got your hand up too. I'll unmute you as well. Go ahead, Angela, if you unmute yourself.
There we go. Hi, John. Yeah, this is my first meeting as a member, so thank you and for having me on board. And I had no problem sending you a check because I still have a checkbook. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but that was no problem for me.
Applications, by the way, are on our website at whho.com.
Great. I wanted to mention something because one thing that Nick brought up a couple times was this fact that some of these schools had been closed for 30 or 40 years, which I think is a little bit of an exaggeration. It may not, I don't know. I've only been here for 30 years, so maybe they had just closed when I got here. But the thing is, the price of land, the value of the land is only going up. So I don't see any rush to get rid of it because the value is only going to go up. So even if it stays, empty for the next 10 years, the value is going to go up. So there's no reason that the LAUSD should be in a big hurry to get rid of it. The other thing is that there's so few vacant land around. There's such little vacant land around here that when they finally do need to build these schools, and they will need to build these schools, believe me, it will happen. That's not going to be available, and it's going to be very costly to get any land back. So I love what you're doing. I think you and Shelley and everybody have been doing a wonderful job on this, and you're very informed, and I really appreciate all you've done. And I just want to say thank you. And we need to keep fighting this, because we have to defend this land, because we're going to need it for schools.
And we are, Angela. I think that's very clear to us. And thank you for joining the membership here. Please spread the word around to your family, your friends, and your neighbors especially. Get them involved in this. A lot of people don't know this is even going on, have no idea about the assault that's going on up in Sacramento, which is going to change everything. I mean, that will change the complexity of every community around. I know about 10 years ago, I heard out of Sacramento that they said that there will no longer be single family developments permitted in the entire state. And they just can't, they say they can't justify somebody utilizing that much property for themselves. How selfish of them. And these COVID days, we find that maybe we need a little more separation than just being stuck in a whole bunch of apartments. But nonetheless, that assault is on at this point. They're trying to raise our fees for doing the appeals to where it becomes almost impossible for this organization to appeal any of those projects that are out of line. But we'll continue to work on them and work on the state legislatures too with that. So Angela, we appreciate your membership and appreciate your comments. We need to have good thoughts of people on these things as to what we can do to make things better. Looking for more hands up. If anybody's got some more comments to the things, please let me know. We're happy to try to accommodate, since we got a little more time tonight than what we had in the past times. But we do thank you for that. That's for sure. Angela, if you go back and mute yourself up, that'd be good. Shelley, any further? Do we have Aaron? Is Aaron still on too?
Yeah, John, I'm here. I think obviously most of these questions were directly for Nick. So I'm not sure that we can address any of them unless someone wants to ask us and re-raise their hands. I of course, he slipped off early and we expected to have him a lot longer. I really would have liked to have gotten more into his defunding of the school police vote. He didn't explain exactly correctly in that, the school board vote wasn't just a cut of.
Sorry, Aaron, I mistakenly muted you. Sorry about
Something
that.
I said. No, so I don't know where you lost me, but his vote on defunding was a little bit misleading in that it wasn't just a straight cut. They reallocated the money, and they reallocated the money completely out of the West Valley and completely out of the San Fernando Valley altogether. There's not of the money that was reallocated, none of it's going north of the 101 from here to Tujunga. So it wasn't like the money was just cut. It was reallocated completely out of our area. So I would have liked to have asked him about that. Nick, just for everyone that's listening, wanted an even bigger cut. He wanted to cut their budget by 50%. And there's a lot of troubling positions within that have been eliminated that we didn't get to ask him about. But just please, everyone, stay on top of that if you can as well.
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed. Nick was supposed to be scheduling until 9 o'clock tonight. We found out when he got online that he had to get off at 15 after 8. So we're a little bit surprised by that. So that's why I had to jump in on him I would have let him go a lot longer. So if anybody was offended by me jumping in, that was the reason for it, because they kind of cut us out of some of the time we expected to have. By the way, as Paul and Regina, I see your hands are still up. If you have more questions, or if not, put your hands back down so I know who's got hands up. If there's any other questions that any of our listeners have got or comments that they'd like to make, we'd like to be happy to hear them as well. Shelley, I'm concerned about what's coming up on the board hearing. We heard Nick says in this next round they're going to pull those sites off. Any comments about that? I was surprised to hear him say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first that I have heard that. I will follow up with his office regarding that. He did not say that they're coming off permanently. He just implied that they may not be on the next round. But I still think it's iffy.
Okay, we'll see. Paul, I see your hand is still up over there. You can unmute yourself if you've got another question to ask.
Sorry, I think it was up by accident. No other questions.
Okay, no worries. And Regina, the same situation for you. I see that, I don't know if your hand is still up intentionally or not.
Oh, this is Rena. Hi. Sorry. My hand is no longer up. My questions have been answered, but I do want to thank you so much for the opportunity to join you all today.
Okay.
And this is a really, really wonderful opportunity to talk.
No worries. We deeply appreciate that. Well, we're getting up to a close time here. Please recognize that we've got a lot of work ahead of us here. For those of you that are online with us, which we deeply appreciate, so many of you still staying with us at this point. When we come up to our next meetings, make sure that you've got your emails into us so that we can communicate with you. Take a look at Nextdoor. We have a lot of information that's put up on nextdoor.com, and mostly out of our emails that go out to individuals. If you haven't read our newsletter, please do. It's been sent out to everybody that's on our list as well. We'll have that up on the website in the next couple of days too. This webinar has been recorded, and we will have that posted sometime in the future as well here within the next few days. So if you need to go back to it, or you have some friends you felt that should go back and take a listen to it, they can do so. So be aware, next time up, we're going to try to have somebody out from Pierce College. We're hoping to get the president out. He has not really spoken to the community since he's been taken over that position. There's been a lot of changes going on at Pierce because of the COVID. A lot of changes are going to be coming up in the future. We're working with them on some of the ingress and ingress problems they're having over there, trying to help with DOT on trying to assist that with some of the committees that I serve on that the council members put us on. But be aware that the committee is doing a lot of stuff. And one of the comments that we had from one of the previous meetings was that everybody kind of thinks that somebody else is doing stuff. And I think that you've got to recognize that that's not always the case. You need to get informed about things that are going on and get in there too and fight about the stuff as well. Get your ideas out there. You know, this is your community as well. Don't let just other people decide what's going to happen for you. And that's unfortunately what's going on with the state legislature right now. Wiener up there is just about pulling all the wires on trying to get all the puppets down here to do everything. There's been interesting development between the Northern California and Southern California. And as a result, the Northern Californians are pretty much dominating and trying to do anything they want to do. And Southern California is still struggling and trying to get that control balance going on. So keep that in mind. We need to do something with that. Try to do something around your community that needs to be done. Utilize the 311 calls if you need to get potholes filled up and what have you. Get a hold of your council member on stuff that's there. Give emails into us on stuff that's going on. If you've got questions coming up on things, I know I got one, like I said today, that wanted to know about the Woodland Hills Golf Course, what's going to go on with that. We're going to have to monitor that and make sure that they don't end up messing up our community on that stuff too. And we'll find ways of making all these things work out. My belief is that if you properly ask the question, you will probably have given you the answer too in that process. So keep that in mind. Shelley, last comments from you and then last comments from Aaron. Shelley, where are we on all this before we finish up for tonight?
No, I just appreciate everyone's support. I'm sorry that it was cut a little shorter than we anticipated because I think a lot of people had more questions to ask, but next time, just keep following the school board agenda and we need to stay on top of it.
Aaron, last comments for us?
Yeah, I'm sorry he had to step off as well. It would have been nice if we could have pushed back on a few things that we had to just leave on the table because we needed to move on to other topics. But I did want to say, you know, John, to add to your point that you just made a moment ago, that in specifics to the Oso and Collins school properties and Highlander as well up in West Hills, the only reason that vote at all got delayed was because of the WHO. We found out about it, we called in, and we, for lack of a better word, made a stink. And that's why the school board delayed the vote, which has allowed us to get in there and speak to them and make the public records request act. So if it's coming off the list right now, you know, a little pat in the back for Shell and the education group and you, John, and the rest of us on WHO. We're the reason those schools are possibly off the list, and that vote was delayed in the first place. Had we not found out about it and gotten a vocal and activated, you know, much worse things could be going on right now. So just wanted to make that mention.
I appreciate it. Faye's just came up and said she had a question. Faye, you're going to unmute yourself?
Yeah. Thank you
Faye,
so much, John.
describe
I
to the
just
rest
want,
of the people who you are, where you live at, and what your previous involvement's been here.
yes. My name is Faye Bart. I live over on Pomelo Drive in West Hills, very near to the Highlander school site. And our community has been extremely upset with regard to what the school district wants to do at Highlander, and we support your efforts. And we have a very strong neighborhood watch. We're over 400 homes in our neighborhood watch. I know it's not as big as your area, but anything you people do, we are behind you, and we will be willing to assist you, whatever it is that you would like us to join in. We'll be happy to do that. Thank you.
Well, Faye, I deeply appreciate that as well. And we know that you were involved with the earlier coalition issues and trying to get organized with this. And one of the things that's important for everybody to recognize is that coalitions are everything, getting the community people involved. Numbers are important. These people are all elected when they know that, one person is 1,000 to them. They know if one person is complaining about something, that really represents about 1,000 people to them. We get enough people that are around at that point in time, that becomes a voting block that scares the dickens out of them. I don't care who they are. So keep that in mind. We need numbers. The numbers are important. We need ideas on things. We need ears out there too. You'll hear things perhaps that are coming up that you wonder what's going on with that. Don't just leave it at that. Give us an email back so that we know what's going on in the community too. Try to make sure that they're not just rumors, but rather things that have factual basis going on to them as well. But we're here to serve you. The Woodland Hills Homeowners Organization has been around since 1985. We're not an association, we're an organization. Associations are the ones that tell you what color you can paint your house and what have you. We don't do that. We're trying to stop those people that tell us what colors we have to paint our house. We want to make sure that we have that freedom in our areas to be able to have a better place to live, work, and to play. That's what we're about. That's what we're working towards. And we need your help and your support. Join us, please. We'll try to get some stuff up. Memberships are available on our website. I think that's about it for now for us. I think I'm going to say goodnight to us all. We're just about at the 9 o'clock hour. We deeply appreciate all of you joining us this evening. And we look forward to having the next one, which was going to be on April the 28th. It'll be a Zoom meeting with hopefully the president from Pierce College. I want to talk to him by the way, about what they're doing with the farm property over there. This organization has always been watching to make sure that they're going to use that property for agricultural purposes. And we want to make sure that that's going to end up being done. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen with those things. Anyway, unless there's any comments from anybody else.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead. I think I heard somebody at that stage, but want to make sure that, Faye, you're still unmuted at this particular point, so mute yourself back up. We thank you all for participating tonight. We deeply enjoyed the opportunities to be able to serve you and to be able to provide this information. And the better informed our community is, the better we're going to be able to take care of these difficulties and make it even a better place for us to live. We thank you for that. So we'll say goodnight to all of you. Thank you much, and have yourself a blessed and safe evening, and we will talk again. Take care.